What's going on YouTube? OCD for EDC here. And what I got for your face balls today are these two knives right here. These both happen to be knives from Maxace. This is a company that I had certainly heard of, and I had seen some of their knives on some other channels, but I personally had never handled a Maxace knife. So I pulled the trigger on these two guys right here. These are both budget knives. And both of these came from White Mountain Knives. And yeah, we're going to get into them. They're pretty impressive. So this one here happens to be, you're looking at Jade G10. It does have a fair amount of texturing on it, which I don't know how well you can see that, but that's something that we'll definitely be talking about. And then of course you've got this blue hardware, got a blue, I think, aluminum backspacer and pocket clip. The hardware is stainless steel, so I'm not sure what type of coating, it may, yeah, I'm not sure what they did on there. And then you've got this logo on the pivot here. There's the blade, and this one happens to be, this is called the Corvus-K, so it's the Maxace Corvus-K, and it's rocking Bohler K-110 blade steel. And it's a liner lock. Sorry, forgot to mention that. This one here is also a Maxace knife, like I said, and it is rocking what they call black ash micarta. The micarta is really great. It's exactly the type of texture that I want out of micarta. It's not polished, which is really fantastic. You can see here you do have a not a deep carry clip, but a completely functional pocket clip. This one's got what appears to be a G10 backspacer, and you do have a little lanyard hole there in the backspacer. This blade is a beast for sure, and it is coated with what appears to be like a titanium nitride coating. I'm not 100% sure what the coating is on this thing, but this one here is called the Ranger, and the blade steel on this guy is XW42. So pretty interesting knife, and a big ass knife for sure. So we'll start out here with a couple size comparisons, and you can get an idea of how big these guys really are. So we're going to start out with the Benchmade bug out and the Spyderco Para 3 lightweight. So as you can see, let me move all these guys up here. As you can see, both of these Maxace knives are big bastards. Here it is against the Spyderco Manix 2 and the Benchmade Super Freak. So as you can see, big knives. So what are we looking at? Well, let's talk about the Corvus-K here first. So overall length on the Corvus-K is 8 3/4 inches. You got a handle length of 4.92 and a blade length of 3.83. Handle thickness on this guy is exactly 1/2 inch, and that stays consistent all the way through. And the blade stock thickness is 152 thousandths or 3.88 millimeters. Cutting edge on this guy measures exactly 3 3/4 inches, measuring the curvature there. So, pretty good size knife for sure. Definitely a larger EDC knife. Action is absolutely stellar. It does need a detent ball ramp, but it's not terrible. The flipper tab will come down and hit your thumb right here, and you're already past the detent ball, so the blade will just free drop there. It's definitely, action is really stellar on this guy. So let's get a weight here. So we're looking at just shy of 4-inch blade, and we're just under 4.5 ounces. So definitely, doesn't feel heavy in hand or anything. I feel like the weight is adequate for this knife. And balance point on this guy, it is a little nose heavy, but it will balance right here, in that first choil area. About right there is the balance point. So that's the Corvus-K. You do have a lanyard hole here at the back, and you do have, it's not a true deep carry clip, but it does ride really low. So you got, just a little bit sticking out of your pocket there. It does carry well in the pocket. And yeah, for a larger knife, it's not, actually, I don't think I measured that. Let's see what it is here at its widest point. Switch this guy back. So at its widest point, you're looking at 1.45 inches. So, it's smaller than most of your Spyderco stuff in the pocket. The footprint of it is quite a bit smaller, even with the flipper tab. So you can see there, it's a much larger knife than the Manix 2, but footprint in the pocket, it's actually quite a bit smaller. One of the things I did notice on this knife, the detent ball hole is exposed when the blade is deployed. I look at that a couple of different ways. I guess, you might be more likely to get stuff in there if, when it's exposed like this. However, it's also easier to clean it out. So I'm kind of on the fence. Maybe somebody, I'm sure, will bitch about the aesthetics of it. But really, to me, I don't know. It doesn't really bother me. I don't really care one way or the other. Like I said, it's, yeah, you might get stuff in there which will certainly affect the deployment of the knife and the retention when it's closed. However, it's going to be real easy to clean it out because you can get right in there. So anyway, so that's the Corvus-K. We're going to set that guy off to the side for a moment. We'll bring out the Ranger here. So Ranger, overall length, 9.2 inches. We got a handle length here of 5.2 inches. Got a blade length of exactly 4. Handle thickness is 5.9 inches, so we're just shy of 0.6 of an inch. And the blade thickness on this guy, this blade's a little thinner at 145 thousandths or 3.75 millimeters. You got a cutting edge on this guy of 4 1/8. So really, great use of blade there, because, you can see here that the scale protrudes up in this area and then kind of angles back down towards your finger. You definitely have a lot of cutting edge. And both of these knives, ergos are fantastic. I mean, this thing here just melts into your hand. You've got this nice little thumb pad right here. It just really, really nice in hand. And the shape of it, you've got a really neutral grip from here to here, and certainly a big enough grip for any hand at all, because I have big ass hands and I've got plenty of room on this knife, no doubt about it. The blade here, you do have a bit of a recurve right in this section, which is something that I would rather not see. I'm not a huge fan of recurves, but it's pretty subtle here. So after multiple sharpenings, I'm sure that'll just probably come out. They did miss the plunge grind here, but like I said, you can see that you've got a bit of a recurve. One thing that I did not measure on this guy is I didn't measure behind the edge on either of them, so we're just going to do that on camera here. But let's get a weight on this guy. So you got a full 4-inch blade on the Ranger here. Get my scale to zero out here. Oop. There we go. So 4.5, just over 4.5 ounces. Neither one of these knives feel overly heavy, and action on this guy is not quite as free dropping as the Corvus, but that's really just due to the blade. The blade stock is lighter, and action's still really spectacular on this guy. It's just that the Corvus drops a little nicer just because that blade's a little heavier out on the end. You got more height and blade thickness. Both of them are flat ground knives, and both of them come to a really, really keen edge. So let's get a behind the edge measurement on both of these guys really quick. So yeah, you're looking at 14 thousandths right there. Your 16 thousandths. Sorry about the light glare. Right there. And then let's get one right out here at the tip, or close to it anyway. So again, 15 thousandths. So for a big ass knife, this thing is really, really well ground and thin behind the edge. On the Corvus-K, I don't know that I'm on it there. There we go. So 15 thousandths, which is beautiful. So both of these, yeah, 16. They're going to be about the exact same. 17 thousandths out here at the end. Ooh, I slid up just a bit. 17 or 18 thousandths out here at the end. So yeah, both blades are really, really well done. Very thin and slicey for knives of this size. And yeah, just well constructed. You know, I'm really impressed with these knives. Like I said, I had never handled a Maxace knife, so these are the first that I've ever handled. I shouldn't say that actually, because I'm pretty sure Maxace made the PMP Revenge. I have handled one of those. I did not own it. I just handled one quite some time ago. And, you know, of course, it was a beautiful knife, but it was also, you know, a couple $100s. These guys, the Corvus-K sells for $65, just like this model here. There are some different colors and variations, so the prices may vary slightly. But this one's $65, and the Ranger is $60. And this is on White Mountain Knives. But, you know, you can find discount codes for White Mountain everywhere. LTK, you can use that discount code and get 10% off. So you're looking at $54 on the Ranger and $58.50 on the Corvus-K. So we're going to pull these guys apart really quick, and we're going to take a look at the construction and see how these guys are put together. Hardware, it's all T8 on this one. I don't know about that one. We'll get into it here in a minute. So Corvus-K, the hardware is all T8. I'm going to shut the knife. So the Corvus-K here is rocking K-110 blade steel. And K-110, for those that don't know, I know it's not a real common blade steel. It's very similar to D2. However, it does have a little bit higher chromium content, so it should be slightly more stainless than D2. As far as the Rockwell hardness of it, I mean, obviously that's all matters how well they did the heat treat, but definitely, you know, so far in just the time that I've had this knife, it seems to be holding up really well. I haven't done an insane amount of cutting, just enough to really kind of get a good understanding of the ergonomics on the knife. So I'll definitely be doing more cutting with this guy. But as you can see right there, we've got double row nylon cage ceramic bearings, which is awesome. And you've got a full liner on the lock side. Again, your double row ceramic bearings. There's your back spacer. Pretty straightforward in its construction. On the other side here, on the show side, no liner except for this, you know, piece here that is essentially just the washer for the bearings to ride on. But I'm glad that they did this design here to keep it from spinning. You know, a lot of companies will do just a washer in a milled out hole in the G10. They went the extra step and included the stop pin, which is just really nice. I love to see the stop pin actually be surrounded by metal. And then, you know, it worked out well. It's just a simple design that just works really well. So on the pivot, it is not D-shaped, so it is a free spinning pivot. However, and it's not tooled on the show side, but it hasn't been an issue to take the guy apart So yeah, pretty, just a nice, well-made knife that, yeah, it's just well done. So I'm actually going to spin these two standoffs around because there was Loctite on that side, and I like to take knives apart. Well, if I can spin it around, maybe I can't. Yeah, I'll do it later. But I like to take knives apart from the other direction, so I like having the show side down when I take knives apart. And yeah, so the reason for that is just because you've got the lock bar that's constantly pushing up. So I just would rather not fight the lock bar when I'm trying to reassemble the knife. You know, you build it kind of like a sandwich, if you will. And there we go. Let's get the... So... Alright, stop pins in. So, you know, I'm really impressed with the quality of these knives. Like I said, Maxace was not a brand that I was really paying much attention to, but I am now for sure. After having these two, both knives are beautifully done, and yeah, just really, really excellent. I'm gonna have to straighten that pivot out, but like I said, I'll do that later. So there is one thing about this Corvus-K here that I'm not super pleased with. So no blade play. Blade looks centered. Oh yeah, I guess that's something else I didn't talk about. Both blades are perfectly centered, just straight in there like swimwear. So no issues there. The one issue that I have with the Corvus-K is there's all this scalloping. There, you can see it pretty good there. So there's, you know, this heavy texturing on the G10 scales, and each one of these scallops comes to a point, and it comes to a point right up at the very edge of the scale. And so although the scales are chamfered really well, those points are not. And I will definitely be sanding those points down. So they become very uncomfortable after not very long. When you first put this guy in your hand, it, you know, it's very ergonomic. The ergos on it are fantastic. You're really locked in, and it, you know, it doesn't have jimping all over the place. You do have a tiny bit of jimping on the flipper tab there, and then you have this kind of gear pattern on the back spacer, which does sit just a little bit proud of the scales. But just a little bit of cutting with this, and these points on these scallops here really started digging into my hand, and they're just uncomfortable. So, you know, just sanding those points down a little bit, I don't think it's going to take much, will make this thing just loads better. So that's something I'm definitely going to do. And so, you know, if you're going to purchase this knife, I would recommend getting it in the Jade G10. So you can do some sanding on this. It won't really show up. I mean, other colors of G10, it's not really going to show up either. You can just Scotch-Brite it a little bit after you sand on it, and it'll bring the color back. So G10, if you've never worked with G10 before, it'll turn kind of white when you're sanding it. But like I said, you just hit it with some Scotch-Brite, and kind of you can just kind of buff those scratch marks right out. So over to the Ranger. This knife is an absolute beast. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, okay, so these are all T8s, looks like. I guess I should have just started on the show side. So these screws here are not going to be to take the knife apart. They're simply here just to hold the scales on. And so far they all look the same. So this back one here, that one certainly is going into a standoff. All right, so that's what we're looking at. Okay, So pivot is T8, and this body screw in the rear is a T6. Excellent. So far so good. No Loctite. That feels like a D-shaped pivot. So I'm going to have to pull the pocket clip. So the pivot on trying to unscrew the pivot from this side just wasn't going to happen because I'm pretty sure that it is a D shape and I'm on the barrel side, so there's no turning that. All I'm going to do is break my driver or strip the screw. All right, so there's our micarta scales. Oh, well, it is a D-shaped pivot for sure because this side is not tooled. Okay, so there's your construction. So you have a lot of skeletonization on this side, and on this side there's really none. Well, let's see if we can get this to break loose. There we go. Got it. Definitely Loctite on this. I'm just going nice and slow. All right, there we go. You can see the Loctite on that guy. So guys, anytime you come across Loctite, if it's real bad, I'll use a soldering iron to heat that up, which definitely works. And here you go. There's your D-shaped pivot. And this guy is riding on single row, what looks like steel ball bearings. And you got a steel detent ball there. There's your blade stop. And here's your blade. So, really nice. I've been super impressed with these guys. Both knives have exceeded my expectations. The micarta on this one is just beautiful. They call it black ash micarta. Like I said, it's definitely the texture of micarta that I like. I know everybody has their own preferences, but this thing is really, really awesome. And for a blade like this, with micarta scales on bearings, it's great. You can see here on these barrel spacers, they are shouldered to sit down into the scales, which is nice. So yeah, this just well made. I'm actually gonna just leave this one apart. I'm gonna put this back together off camera because I'm gonna do a little cleaning on it, and I don't want to bore you guys with all that stuff. Looks like no, okay. For a minute there, it looked like the lock side liner was thicker. So this XW42 blade steel, this is one that probably not many people are familiar with. It too is another similar to D2 blade steel. However, XW42 does have a little bit higher content of manganese and nickel, and that allows this steel to get much harder. So, depending on the heat treat, I don't know how well it's heat treated. I haven't had these tested. Most certainly, these will end up going to Kurt to get tested, and I will certainly interested to find out what the Rockwell is on these guys. However, XW42 does have the potential to be up in the 65, 66 range, which would be really cool if it actually is that hard. I don't know. The little bit of cutting that I've done with this knife, it's held up really well so far. It's haven't carried it a ton, but certainly have cut a little bit with it, and it's very ergonomic. The handle is really well done. I don't have any complaints with the Ranger at all as far as the carry goes. My only real complaint with this knife is the fact that blade's got a bit of a recurve in it. Like I said, back in this area, I can absolutely sharpen that out of it, but that's really my only complaint. I wish that this would have been straight all the way across. Other than that, guys, both knives I think are absolutely stellar for the money. 50 or 60 bucks getting you, G10 and Bohler K-110 or XW42. I know there's a ton of D2 knives out there these days, but these here are both really great ones, and they're different in design, a lot different than what other companies are doing. This guy here is riding on double row ceramic bearings, which the action is just stellar, and the double row gives it so much lateral support. It's really amazing how well this knife just functions. It's really, really great. So once I sand down those points that are on the edges, this thing's going to be a stellar knife. And of course I'm gonna rit dye this thing something, I don't know what yet, but it's not gonna stay jade colored for very long, I can tell you that. I just wanted to get this video out there before I did any modifications to it, because this is exactly how you would receive it from Justin over at White Mountain Knives. So anyway, guys, like I said, I'm going to clean this guy up and put it back together off screen. So have a great day. Thanks a lot. And check out the links below. There's a bunch of different stuff down there, and I'll be changing them and doing different things. So if you want to help support my channel, check out the links. Have a good one. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.